In Chapter 2, I was intrigued by Carl Lewis's identification of a culture of poverty and the discourse that followed. Lewis identified poverty not only as a short-term situation precipitated by an impactful event such as a job layoff or death of household member, but generational, a long-term position and status defined by two or more generations living within the condition. Ultimately, Lewis's expansion of this idea of poverty led to the cultural deficit model, a structure in society that is defined by class attainment or lack thereof, and the challenges one group faces when moving from one status to the next. I chose the topic generational poverty because of the relevance to my local community and the impact for the future survival of our community. Our town is identified as one of the lowest income towns in the state. 67% of our majority population is retired and living on fixed incomes. Our next subcategory, or about 25%, are families whose main breadwinners are high school graduates with some community or university education. Finally, the remaining 10% includes college graduates or those with advanced degrees. I provide these statistics as a way to substantiate the average household income in our community in 2015 as a little more than $29,000. For the past 2 years, our local school district has identified Ruby Payne's A Framework for Understanding Poverty as an integral part of the curriculum. Staff is trained semi-annually through the use of poverty simulations and case studies to understand the mindset of those steeped within the culture of poverty. The focus of the training centers on understanding the culture and providing interventions to teach children within the framework. Currently, our community is at an economic juncture. Located just 65 miles south of a large metropolitan area, we find our school system growing when families are moving to our bedroom community to escape the high stress of urban and even suburban life. Our task as a school district is now to shift our thinking and teaching structure, to identify the underpinnings of the culture of poverty and encourage a shift from the current social status while being responsive to the new middle class that begins to populate our school. Empirical research disagrees with the idea of a culture of poverty. While I would disagree with the syntax culture, I would argue there is a mindset of poverty, and that mindset is perpetuated through the generations that accept the status quo and do not know how to improve. Ruby Payne identifies a mental model for the three classes that illustrate the differences. Payne identifies hidden rules among poverty, middle class, and wealth that are categorized by relationships, achievement, and connections respectively. Relationships are of ultimate importance to those who live in poverty. The basic essential needs of life are most important and are represented by family, time, safety, and health, among other basal needs. People in poverty value family as possessions and use their time and energy to ensure family survival at the basic level. Achievement is what people in the middle class spend their time doing. Although there is some overlap between poverty and middle class, the gap narrows. People in the middle class value education and civic involvement. They begin to see the world as a place bigger than themselves. They know how to outsource help when needed. They seek resources for health issues. They have careers instead of jobs. They have time and money for shopping and vacations and have the financial resources for both. Wealthy people are most concerned with the connections they can make. They serve their personal and professional communities as members of boards, in advisory positions, and charities. Wealth allows international travel and affords exposure to the upper echelon of civic life. Since only the top 10% of Americans reside in this idea of wealth, the concentration of this project will be focused on poverty and middle class. A quiz created by Ruby Payne illustrates the skill set for each class. One area addressed for example's purpose is clothing. For survival in poverty, the query is, I know which churches and sections of town have the best rummage sales. A similar question in the middle class survival quiz states, my children know the best brand names in clothing. In contrast, a statement for the wealth quiz inquires, I know who my preferred financial advisor, legal firm, certified public accounting firm, designer, florist, caterer, domestic employment service, and hairdresser are. In addition, I have a preferred tailor, travel agency, and personal trainer. Just a sampling, but the quiz further identifies the gaps seen between the classes. When educating children from poverty, is it any wonder that we must speak their language before we can hope to teach them anything? One area identified in the relationship graphic that is not seen in the other two is entertainment. While middle class and wealthy people seek entertainment from more civic-minded endeavors, people in poverty depend on each other through the use of relational stories and the entertainment industry. I heard Rosie O'Donnell refer to television as her babysitter in many of her comedic routines, and I can relate to that. My mother struggled for her independence in the 1960s and early 70s, leaving my younger sister and me at home to fend for ourselves. We spent countless hours watching shows like The Brady Bunch, All in the Family, and later Happy Days as sources of entertainment and a glimpse into the world outside our lives. As a young adult, I learned to parent watching The Cosby Show and examined alternative methods of discipline and reaction to day-to-day living with my children. Knowing my family was not fully represented by the Huxtables, I also watched Roseanne to get a sense of alternative response to working class issues tackled by the Connors. As I evaluated how entertainment affects the high school children I teach, I began to question and listen to the sorts of entertainment they seek. Time and time again, their response was Shameless, the American comedy drama television series seen on the cable network Showtime. I was surprised to learn they watched this series. I found they hadn't watched until recently when their families subscribed to services that offered previous seasons of the show. I had followed the show from its beginning and found I was viewing from a sociological perspective. I identified many of the issues outlined in this series as those my students face every day in our local community. Issues such as sex being the driving force for survival, matriarchal leadership, substance abuse, undervaluation of education, and a myriad of other social issues. Not surprisingly, my students became interested in Shameless as a sort of validation for their lives. They felt a kinship with the highly dysfunctional Gallaghers and realized their plight was not particular to our town. If current students use Shameless as a point of reference for movement beyond classes, I can only applaud Showtime for realizing this fact. Although the show continues to be situated firmly in poverty, as the series progresses, the characters do as well. The Gallaghers, who initially were completely self-absorbed, are growing beyond their circumstances to become independent and functional citizens. While far from middle class, they demonstrate that movement within and between class is possible. On the other hand, reality television and entertainment is also popular in our community. The migration from Toddlers and Tiaras to Here Comes Honey Boo Boo to the current Mama June from Not to Hot creates a sense within our community that even the most ridiculous indictment of humanity can become rich if only they find their personal idiosyncrasy. The irresponsible use of media perpetuates the issue of generational poverty at the basic level and projects the illusion that I don't need to work for success. I just need to find the right producer. I certainly don't intend this to be an indictment on the entertainment industry. I simply hope that industry realizes that in their quest to entertain, they exploit those who are the source of entertainment and thus influence those who watch. I apologize. I did not realize that we could not add links within VoiceThread, and I had video clips for the 3 examples of television media that I was referring to throughout the presentation. Situation comedies were a mainstay for entertainment and are beginning to make a comeback. From network programming to cable programming, the options available are numerous. Viewers can find an offering to appease whatever mood or circumstance they find themselves. Poverty, however, remains somewhat underidentified. The culture of poverty has often been referred to as the silent culture because we don't want to see the less desirable side of society. This does not exemplify a multicultural society. There has been some penetration in the market by entertainment that uses race as its focus. Much like the educational additive approach defined in Chapter 10 of the text, entertainment makes an attempt to add programming content, concepts, themes, and perspectives outside the mainstream, but tends to ignore class. Perhaps a focus on class would open a political and economic door that entertainment is hesitant to explore. Perhaps too many people can identify with a poverty status, and the topic would be too controversial. Whatever the case, some entertainment executives recognize that segment of their target market is growing. Television series like Shameless not only shine a light on the issue, but engage the audience and provide a demonstration of movement within and out of that class through storytelling. Others produce entertainment at the expense of those it exploits. The majority of reality television has become so popular of late, operates within the realm of the wealthy, outlined by Ruby Payne. This source of entertainment is viewed as social faux pas by elitists and in reality merely exploits the position of those in lower classes. Television has expanded its offerings throughout the years, but still is the primary source of entertainment for those who live in poverty. Television viewing is an economic way for these families to satisfy both the need to escape and build the all-important family relationship. The situation comedy that was the mainstay of entertainment throughout the 1970s and much of the 80s has been replaced by edgier offerings on cable networks, as well as reality format entertainment on expanded networks. Generational poverty is a subject that is just becoming the focus for many outlets, possibly due to the widening range of the families who live within that framework of poverty. One solution to this widening status is to utilize these series as a means of education for movement within and out of poverty, much like often taboo subjects were explored in the aforementioned situation comedies. An understanding of what our students see, as well as the relevance to their lives, creates a dialogue to explore and a common ground to begin to bridge the gap between the relationship and achievement statuses in the classroom, as well as community.